Welcome to the Loyal Opposition Podcast. I'm Bernie Flowers, one of Uncle Sam's wayward children. I believe that our country's best days are still in front of us, but if those best days are to come, we need to change the direction of the country now, before it's too late. I intend to talk about important topics every week in hopes of helping to improve our country and our way of life. Please like, share, and subscribe. Let's get started. Our guest for episode 33 is author Stephen Wallis. Mr. Stephen Wallis is an Army veteran. He's a former Washington, D.C. area firefighting chief line officer. He's a retired high school English teacher and a principal. He's an author of the new book on American K-12 schools entitled Dead Last: The Triumph of Character, Passion, and Teamwork in Education. Mr. Wallis is the recipient of numerous awards, including the American Federation of School Administrators Distinguished Leadership Award, who cited him among the top 8 school principals in the entire nation. His publications include chapters in books by the Heritage Foundation and by the Calvert Institute of Public Policy. He was a co-founder and president of the proposed Business Preparatory Institute, a charter high school for urban youths. I'm currently reading his book, Dead Last, and as I read through his book, I thought to ask him to appear on my podcast and share some of his thoughts about his book. Stephen, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Bernie. Nice to be with you.
Outstanding. You, sir, are a recognized expert on excellence in education. You, sir, are a fascinating fellow. Can I ask you to answer a few questions about your book for the audience?
I'd be happy to.
Outstanding. Well, first of all, what is the state of K through 12 education currently?
It's not good. It's in a failing state at this point, Bernie. And we go to 2 organizations, national organizations, to take a look at both the landscape of schools, physical features of schools, and also the academic progress. One's called the NCES, the National Center for Education Statistics. The other, the National Assessment of Educational Progress, which puts out the NAEP report, often referred to as the nation's report card. According to NCES, to give you an idea of the state of education and why it is, first of all, we have, during an academic year, 10 million students who are routinely bullied during the school day, of whom 160,000 kids on any given day of the week remain home from school because of a frail psyche, because they fear attending school. In my view, it's a broad brush, but nonetheless, because I've been in for so long, I can tell you the major reason for that is that administration staff and school staff in general will not step to the plate to put an end to such menacing behavior.
Wow.
We also have 350,000 education staff members in any given year, any given academic year, who are threatened while on the job. 210,000 of whom are actually physically assaulted in our schools across the nation.
Wow.
These are teachers. Often they are teachers. They can be administrators, school secretaries, cafeteria workers, school bus drivers, volunteer parents in schools. We also have 2 million students, according to NCS, who actively and admit carrying weapons to school.
Wow.
It's completely out of control. Academically, according to the NAEP report, in their words, as American K-12 students matriculate through school, they do less well each succeeding year. The antithesis, the very opposite of what any American wants in his or her school for his or her child. So it's not at all good. And because of that, it's resulted in, for example, the last graduating class, 3 million students this past year were given diplomas. Only 25% tested proficient in mathematics. 37% tested proficient in reading. And much of America is not really tuned in and really knows this. 37.5% were proficient in reading. And it's bad news, Bernie, for the rest of the years. I mean, we could talk civics, geography, science, and we'd be talking about 20%, 25%, and 22% respectively. In fact, in U.S. history is another example. Out of the 3 million students who graduated, who hold diplomas, fully 87% of the kids know nothing about United States history because only 20.5 to 13% actually tested proficient. They know less about world history, but they know a lot about indoctrination. And of that 37% I told you that tested proficient in reading, my math leaves that at 63% who did not test proficient.
Right.
And of that percentage, fully 19%, almost 1 in 5 students out of the 3 million who hold diplomas cannot read their diplomas.
Amazing.
So
wow.
It's bad news. And I will tell you that it's such an irony that those vested with the responsibility of educating our students seem to have forgotten what it means to educate. They seem to have forgotten the high expectations, the value that people need to put on that education, that they need to instill in kids, the self-discipline that's required. They ignore the caring, the love, the nurturing that parents bring to the table by preparing kids to be prepared for school. And then they get into school, and after 12 years, we're saddled with millions of youngsters who are frankly unprepared, uneducated, and many communities feel it's a major reason because of the indoctrination that seems to be going on throughout America. So when you ask me what is the state of American schools, particularly when compared to other developing nations, we don't fare well at all. And it's got to change.
Amazing. I'm stunned. I mean, I heard some of these stats before, but not as soberly as you put them. And you are the expert.
Yeah, well, it's really too bad. And I really think we've dropped the ball over the years. As I said, we've got to move ahead. We have to go in a different direction for certain.
Understood. I've got another question for you. Ready?
Sure.
Why did you write the book?
I wrote the book because K through 12 schools, K through 16 schools, really, including our universities, but for our purposes today, K through 12 schools remain a train wreck. And I wanted to share with the country how one particular school, a failing school, typical of many schools throughout the nation, decided to rewrite its story. It wanted to be successful. And we did it by the community as a whole. And when I say that, I'm talking about each of the constituencies. We're talking about the teachers and staff, the youngsters themselves, the parents, without whom we would not have been able to accomplish what turns out to be a central part of the book.
Right.
And we decided what we would do. I decided what I had to do is change the culture of the school. Parents are very, very concerned about the failing nature of the school and what was going on with the school, which we can talk about in a few minutes. But to put a pencil point on it, I decided that we needed to incorporate and make character the soul of the school and incorporate, frankly, virtue, honor, respect for one another.
I love it.
Ethical behavior, merit, rigor, standards of behavior, standards of academic excellence. And Bernie, I am telling you, in a nutshell, it catapulted the school to academic excellence. And when I say that, I mean not only to state recognition, but national recognition. And that is by far different from the concerns expressed by Americans regarding what they believe is indoctrination in our schools. But they believe that many of the schools are actually guided by more of a cultural and political agenda. And what is particularly disconcerting is that many school districts, not only throughout Maryland, but throughout the nation, have allied themselves with a very divisive, what I think is harmful, and socialistic philosophy revolving around diversity, equity, inclusion, gender ideology,
right,
identity politics, even going so far as embracing the Marxist Black Lives Matter agenda.
Oh, yeah.
Which, by the way, research and historians maintain, and these are men and women, both sides of the political spectrum, men and women that look like you and me, esteemed men and women looking at this, have stated and deemed every bit of this a lie, that the foundation upon which all this nonsense rests, that is really tearing apart this country, is in fact a falsehood. And so opposite that, of course, are the many schools throughout the nation that are successful, but they operate differently than those in the main. And the view I've had of education for many, many years, something I picked up reading a biography of Thomas Jefferson probably 45 years ago, is that education really is about ameliorating the condition, promoting the virtue, and thereby advancing the happiness of mankind, men and women, boys and girls.
I love it.
And I thought at the time that was a beautiful philosophy of life,
Yes.
and particularly apropos for teaching and learning, for education.
Mm-hmm.
So when you ask why I wrote the book, that's why I wrote the book, because I took that with me from the day I taught high school English in room 102 in a school about 10 miles from here for the near 40 years that I've been in education. And I really believe that if America is to fulfill, or at least obtain, her share of education fulfillment, it's going to have to be by adopting a Jeffersonian view of teaching and learning. And so in that vein, Dead Last, the book, the reason why I wrote it, becomes a clarion call throughout America to stop accepting the nonsense that is education, that we can do far better, we must do better, and that it's time to throw our hands up and stand athwart our current history, our current events, the problems within our culture, and stand with like-minded congressmen and congressmen-elect like you, like-minded lawmakers who fund education, men and women in communities, organizations, coalitions like Moms for Liberty, Parents Defending Education throughout the nation, all to say that we beseech you, you board members, you school board members, you state school board members, the White House, the Secretary of Education, anyone with a pivotal position in education, we beseech you, or we demand that you get rid of this diversity, equity, inclusion, and return a sense of honor to schools throughout America. Incorporate character throughout every school and every community throughout this country. And that's the position, Bernie, I've held for probably over 40 years. That's why I wrote the book, and that's my position, and I'm sticking with it.
Stephen, I love it. I love it. I got another question for you, though.
Sure.
Ready?
Ready.
Next question is, what is the book about, and who should read it?
That's a good question. The book is about bringing to the fore in every school district quality instruction. What does that instruction look like? How do we derive it? Why do we revere it? How do we derive the best student behavior from the entire student body? because that is such a challenge for so many schools throughout the nation. How do we derive the deportment that we want, where kids will not only accept the instruction, but absorb the instruction, and others as well? How do you boost student academic achievement performance? I mean, all of this is what the book brings. How do you cultivate parent involvement in schools, the wider involvement of your community, in order for a school to operate at peak efficiency? You may recall that in the midterm elections, we had people running for local, state, national offices. The one I recall offhand is the gubernatorial election, where one candidate felt that the only important role that parents play was really getting kids to school. When you hear that, I immediately know that's not someone you want to listen to at all. I talk about those folks in the book.
Right.
What I mean, those kinds, the people that we want most involved in education are the kids' parents, for God's sakes. That's a major tenet of successful schools. So that's what the book is about. What people don't know is that the book is unique in that it's written through the prism of my, as principal, taking over an in crisis school. In this case, a school designated by the state police as a hotspot community, so designated because of the preponderance of crime throughout the community. And parents had decried the widespread student misbehavior, the disrespectful behavior, the violent behavior at times at the school, the widespread bullying, the thievery that was going on, the degree to which they saw a lot of the instruction as inferior. They didn't take kindly on the administration of the school or the county superintendent. They said at the time he was retiring, they had received no assistance at all from central office, not from the lawmakers that were supposedly representing them in the Congress. And they said, Mr. Wallis, the school you're inheriting is one where we feel personally stuck. And the people who could afford it and could live, could send their kids elsewhere, have done so. But we're in a real pinch here. And I listened to them for a while. And I think when they left, there was at least a scintilla of hope. And I was capitalizing on that.
Right.
They were cautiously optimistic, probably an emphasis more on cautiously than optimistic. But I capitalized on that, Bernie. And from that day forward, the trajectory of the school changed. And for the sake of our podcast, let's fast forward 4 years. The same exact school is being talked about differently.
Mm-hmm.
People are talking about teaching excellence. They're talking about student behavioral and academic excellence, their achievement. They're talking about the extent to which parents were welcomed and find themselves coming in and out of the building, in and out of classrooms.
Mm-hmm.
It was a wholesale change. We had, I developed these academic interventions that saw kids coming in probably an hour before the school day, working with math specialists and working with reading teachers and what have you. We had a number of kids who were so-called non-readers. And we were going to end of that. I was measured. I wanted them to know I was reliable, and I was resolute. We were not going to be the school we had. So we established standards of behavior. I made sure that character was the soul of that school, as I mentioned earlier. We had standards of academic excellence. I adopted many years ago. It's an old Ignatian Jesuit philosophy. The Latin is cura personalis, and it means care for the whole person.
Wow.
From my classroom, years later, to administration and taking over a school, particularly this school, everyone needed to know, no matter what his or her station, you mattered. And we together were going to take this school and make it, and I told them, my kids, I needed your help to make this a school of excellence. And so we developed different partnerships. You're very lucky in a school if you have 2 to 3, 4, maybe 5 partnerships. Very lucky if 2 or 3 of them are active with other businesses. Well, it got to the point where, in this case, I developed 32 separate partnerships. We had partnerships with the Rotary,
It's impressive.
successful men and women that would help us. And so I convinced them very quickly. I convinced them to hold their meetings every once in a while at the school, which they never would have thought to do years earlier. But now we were at a point where we were crushing it. And so I had started a Dress for Success Day. Kids would come in, shirt and tie. Any parents that couldn't afford it, I told them, contact me privately. We'll take care of you. So anyway, the Rotary men and women would come in, and they'd come to the door and they would be greeted. And so Kwame Johnson would walk up to Mr. Flowers and say, Mr. Flowers, I'm Kwame Johnson. I'm a 7th grader here. I'm going to be 8th grade next year. And I'm going to escort you to where your meeting is today. But I wonder, could you give me some ideas of what I should do in high school when I get there and how I should better prepare myself to be as successful as you? And I'd be out in the hallway and I'd hear these conversations you would never have heard 4 years earlier. The kids were proud. The kids were dug in. They wanted to do well. When they got that first taste of success, they wanted to take it forward. That's what the book is about. The book is about how it is that we can turn the school into one of instructional excellence. And so schools need specific values to do that. And so I was hell-bent on making sure that we reflected those values that underscore successful schools. That we were going to have in our school the research-based best practices that propel education in every classroom. That we were going to develop a strand of professional development that allowed teachers and the rest of the administrative team, the non-certified staff as well, to reach behavioral and academic targets. So we were very serious about what we were doing. It was a monomaniacal focus on teaching and learning. I would be on the phone throughout the school year, every year, with different school districts. I'd find out, for example, why this school district in New Mexico was so successful in advancing the kids in mathematics. I had different department chairs and team leaders on the phone, online, so that we were on top of our craft. And I'm telling you, it was infectious. Parents would come in there. They were so welcome to the school. They had decried 4 years ago how ridiculously unkempt the school was, how dirty the cafeteria was, how blighted the grounds were, the cracked windows, and all of that had ended. What we did was not only make the school comfortable for people to come to work every day, but we wanted parents to know that their kids were being welcomed warmly, that they were in a warm, secure, inviting environment, and one that was into teaching. There would be no indoctrination.
Right.
It was important that everyone understood that the kids were to be taught more and more how to critically think about issues. They were not to be told what to think. That's the difference in many instances with many schools throughout the nation. It's the difference between a successful school and a school that's not so successful. And so we took it to heart that we were going to do the kinds of things that propel teaching and learning. And the idea was to look at being better tomorrow. We were really good today. We were crushing it. But you know what, folks? We're going to be better tomorrow. And sometimes the advancement, Bernie, was glacial. We would work with kids. We were working as hard as we could with kids to advance their academic achievement. And it was tough. And then, not all of a sudden, because it was grudgingly long, a lot of those days. But then 4, maybe 5 years later, I get a call from the Washington Post. No
Really?
conservative periodical. They put out an annual education review. They want to know why it is that of late, over the last 3 or 4 years, they were seeing changes in the school, that their review of schools in the Virginia, Washington, Maryland area showed that this was what they called a dead-end school. What in the world happened? We chatted for a few minutes. And about a month later, the magazine comes out, and our school is cited among the top schools in the Virginia, Washington, D.C., Maryland metropolitan area.
Totally impressive.
The kids were ecstatic. The parents were ecstatic. The staff really felt good about itself. And, it wasn't long after that that we achieved state recognition, which the school was called a State Character School of the Year, and then later achieved national recognition. And when people read the book, and I've heard feedback from people, Bernie, as far as Seattle, Washington, Tucson, Tulsa, Houston, Minneapolis, St. Paul. They like a lot about the book, but they say they really like the anecdotes that are in the book. They like the fact that we really took a hard-nosed attempt at making character the soul of the school, and it remained that way. They liked the idea that we were about honor, that we were about excellence, that we were about not only looking for good behavior, but then instituting these grade level academic interventions that helped kids. We weren't accepting that kids were just going to fail. And readers have picked up on that. Every child who might have a negative grade, a low standard grade in his or her course, received an action plan. That person, that individual would meet with a staff member. The parent would be involved. So we weren't there so that kids could fail. We just weren't going to consider that. So this is what your child has to do, and this is what we need on your part as a parent. Well, you can imagine a school community they were elated that the school was taking such an active interest in their child. And so readers like that. They like the fact that whether it's my expectations, my philosophy, whether it's the honors we garnered along the way over those years, that all of this can be replicated throughout the country. And I'm a firm believer that your zip code should not dictate that you get a lesser quality education than someone else. All of this is in the book. This is what the book is about. That it doesn't make any difference whether you're in South Central LA or Boise, San Diego, Parkville, Silver Spring, New York City, back over to Lansing, down to New Orleans. We can do this, Bernie. But it requires that all of us stand in unison and say we will no longer accept the nonsense that passes for education. A CEO from Minneapolis, St. Paul gets a hold of me. He said, this book, Mr. Wallis, reads like a primer, a how-to book. We're dying out here in Minnesota. And I told him, do your best to get the book out there and get it around. Because that's what the book is about. The book is about those ideas that surround success. It doesn't make any difference what your industry is, what your job is. If you're about schools, you're about strong instructional leadership. You're about a clear and coherent message to the community. You're about a safe and orderly environment, a welcoming, warm, loving, caring environment. You're about high expectations for success. You're about opportunity to learn and time on task. There's no time in the school day for kids not to be on top of a particular international issue and then be allowed, in fact, with glee, allow them to go outside and protest an event. The idea is to maximize the opportunity to learn in that school in that time. The idea is to make sure there's frequent monitoring of student progress. There are various ways of doing that, but you would be surprised at the number of people in the profession who might give the teacher or give the student some instruction and then maybe provide a test on that instruction maybe a week or two later. Work with the student. Make it frequent that you're monitoring their success, and make sure that there are positive home-school relations.
Yeah,
that's what we do. All of that is very, very important. It's what the book is about. And as I may have said earlier, I really hope that the book serves to be that clarion call so that people know throughout America that there are options. You don't have to accept You don't have to accept an unsatisfactory school in your community. We need to make sure that everyone understands that there is an option. And for many people, all they have to do is read dead last and take from it the tenets that are spelled out in there. And I'm telling you, we did it. Any school community can do it.
I got it right here. Oh, wow. Let me get it in front of you. Maybe I should put it in
just
the
there.
top.
I can. Yes.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's the one.
Way to go. Well, I tell you, Bernie, I'm not one to say that there's a silver bullet for every challenge. People make good arguments, but leaders have to look at the nuances as well and weigh that as well. But having said that, I will tell you that the answer to the woes that plague us in education throughout the United States lie within the pages of that book you just lifted.
Amen.
We can do this, and I would urge all to take a look at it. And I'm really happy to be here today as well, Bernie. I'm happy to answer any more questions you might have, and I really wish you well in your congressional candidacy. And I hope our paths cross again in the not too distant future.
Well, I'm working my way through your book, of course. Okay. And what I'm seeing is what I like. And that is why I called you, because I'm totally impressed and I want to use as much of the book as you will allow me to do as a platform for what I plan to do with education once I get elected. So with that said.
Yeah, I was going to tell you, Bernie, thank you for that. And I'm humbled by that. But readers across the nation, they provide this feedback that they very much want the book to be, they suggest the book should be the centerpiece of every governor's education reform initiative. People in Pinellas County said, Mr. Wallis, we have to get this book to our governor, DeSantis. They want to get it to the former president, Trump. They want to get it in the hands of every educator, every parent of every school-age child. And I'm thankful for that. And a lot of good work, hard work on the part of kids, parents, staff went into that book. And I'm happy and humbled that you're enjoying it, and you're certainly more than welcome to use it on your campaign.
Outstanding. Well, you certainly have put your heart and soul into it, but I got one more question for you.
Sure.
The floor is now yours. Talk to the people. Tell them what's on your mind.
Probably the most important challenge that we have in the United States today is not accepting what we're permanently or what we currently have in the way of education.
Mm-hmm.
That would be the most important. You know, we've been told for 247 years that essential to our liberties, essential to the freedoms that we hold dear throughout America, is an educated populace. That if we want to maintain our constitutional republic, we have to educate the nation. We are not doing that. We have not been doing that for years. Right. And frankly, what we rely on every year in schools throughout America are the many kids, and they're the majority, frankly, in my view, that are well-raised, well-grounded, they're respectful. Bernie, they'll go by me in the morning. Good morning, Mr. Wallis, how are you? And every year, the United States depends on those kids to prop up the millions who didn't fare so well in our schools. We can change that, and the answer can be found within the chapters of Dead Last.
Wow. Well, hey, how can people reach you if they need to?
Well, they're more than welcome to contact me by email, Stephen Wallis, author @gmail.com. Stephen, Stephen. Wallis is a variant of the popular spelling you see. Wallis is Wallis. So Stephen Wallis, author @gmail.com.
Outstanding. Well, Stephen, I tell you, I'm honored that you would come on our show. You're enlightening me and helping to educate me on how we can make things better. And again, I plan to use your concepts as a platform to build my platform for my campaign on education. You bring a wealth of tactical expertise to the problem of educating our children, and I am very proud to know you. So thanks for coming on the show.
You're awfully welcome. You're awfully welcome, Bernie. Thanks for having me, and I hope our paths cross in the not too distant future.
We will make that happen. You can be assured of it. Well, that's about it for now. This has been the Loyal Opposition Podcast, produced in association with Liberty Arise Media, Fallback Productions, and other podcasters. I ask that you like, share, and subscribe to this podcast and to this channel. Be sure to get your copy of my book, Black Values Matter, available on Amazon or as an ebook on Audible and on Apple Books. I'm Bernie Flowers, a congressional candidate. It's time for a new vision for Maryland's 3rd District. Fighting for people before politics. Empowering through education. Prioritizing America's security. Building prosperity. And enhancing family-focused policies. Visit flowersformaryland.com to learn more. Books. And also, remember, it's okay to disagree, but if we want our country to prosper, we must insist on unity, transparency, and civility from ourselves and our fellow citizens. Thank you for listening to the Loyal Opposition Podcast. See you next week.